If you find yourself awake in the quiet hours of the night, staring into the dark, wondering why the room has suddenly grown so empty, I want you to take a deep, steady breath. The sudden quietness around you is not an accident, nor is it a sign that heaven has forgotten your name. For weeks, or perhaps for months, you may have felt a strange distance growing between you and the people who used to understand you. Conversations that once flowed effortlessly now feel strained and heavy. Doors that you knocked on with sincere tears have remained stubbornly shut. And in the silence of your heart, you have asked the question that every chosen soul eventually asks: why has everything gone so still? Why does it feel as though the world is moving forward while you are left standing in an empty hallway? Listen closely to what your spirit is trying to tell you tonight. That emptiness is not a void of abandonment. It is a holy boundary. God has deliberately lowered the volume of the world around you because He is about to speak something so significant, so life-altering, that no human noise can be allowed to drown it out. When God prepares to deliver a mandate that will redefine the trajectory of a life, He always clears the room first. Think of how a master artisan works with delicate and precious instruments. He does not work amidst the clamor of a crowded street. He retreats to the quiet workshop where every small detail can receive full attention. In the same way, the withdrawal of certain friendships, the drying up of old sources of validation, and the ending of familiar seasons are not punishments. They are divine evacuations. If those voices had remained close to your ear, you would have looked to their opinions instead of seeking divine guidance. You would have settled for human approval, mistaking the fleeting applause of men for the eternal seal of your Creator. God had to quiet the applause so that you would finally listen for the whisper. He had to let the crowd disperse so that you would no longer be tempted to build your identity upon the fragile, shifting sands of public opinion. You are being secluded not because you were rejected, but because you are being consecrated for a weight of glory you cannot yet see. This process of divine reconstruction was described with breathtaking clarity by C.S. Lewis in his classic work, Mere Christianity. He wrote, "Imagine yourself as a living house. God comes in to rebuild that house. At first, perhaps, you can understand what He is doing. He is getting the drains right and stopping the leaks in the roof and so on. You knew that those jobs needed doing, and so you are not surprised. But presently, He starts knocking the house about in a way that hurts abominably and does not seem to make any sense. What on earth is He up to? The explanation is that He is building quite a different house from the one you thought of, throwing out a new wing here, putting on an extra floor there, running up towers, making courtyards. You thought you were being made into a decent little cottage, but He is building a palace. He intends to come and live in it Himself. Look at your life through those words tonight. The demolition of your comfort zone, the stripping away of small securities, it is all part of this divine architecture. God is expanding your spiritual capacity because the message He is preparing for you cannot fit inside the small cottage of your past ambitions. If you search throughout the sacred scriptures, you will discover that every mighty turning point was preceded by a season of wilderness. Moses was kept on the lonely backside of the desert in Midian for 40 long years, tending sheep in absolute obscurity, far away from the grandeur of Pharaoh's palace. To an outside observer, it looked as though his destiny had died in the sand, yet it was in that very silence, amidst the dry rocks and burning sun, that God was unlearning the wisdom of Egypt from his soul, preparing him to hear the voice out of the burning bush. John the Baptist dwelt in the harsh solitude of the Judean desert, until the appointed day of his public manifestation to Israel. The wilderness was not a detour, it was the classroom. It was the place where the messenger was forged before the message was delivered. Do not despise the quiet season you are walking through right now. When God places a soul in isolation, it is not because He has set them aside, it is because He is shielding them from premature exposure. He is guarding your heart until the fullness of time arrives. The sacred text gives us a profound command that cuts through human anxiety. In the book of Psalms, chapter 46, verse 10, we read, "Be still, and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. Notice the very first instruction in that verse, be still. In the original language, that phrase carries the weight of letting go, releasing your grip, and ceasing all frantic striving. It means stepping back from the anxious need to fix every circumstance with your own hands. How often do we try to force answers when heaven is asking for our surrender? We run from one opinion to another, exhausting our strength in trying to open locked doors. Yet God says to your soul tonight, let go. Stop trying to orchestrate the outcome of your life by human calculations. You do not need to fight for attention when you are seated in the presence of the King. When you truly become still, you begin to perceive the hand of God moving in places where you thought nothing was happening. His sovereignty is working behind the veil, aligning every missing piece on your behalf. So let this realization settle deeply into your spirit right now. You are not forgotten, and you have not been left behind. This quiet room, this season of waiting, this sudden clearing away of distractions, it is all a holy setup for what is about to be revealed. When an archer prepares to shoot an arrow into the distance, he does not throw it forward with his bare hands. He pulls it backward, deep into the tension of the bowstring, holding it steady in silence until the target is perfectly aligned. You have felt the pull backward. You have felt the strain of the tension in your soul. But the tension was never meant to break you. It was meant to give you momentum. The hand of the master archer is holding you firmly. He has not lost his grip, nor has he misjudged the angle of your calling. As we move into the next moments of this reflection, open your heart to receive the spiritual understanding you have longed for. God is tuning your ears to hear what flesh and blood cannot reveal. One of the greatest dangers for a chosen soul is looking for God in the wrong frequency. We live in a world that equates power with volume, influence with spectacle, and divine favor with dramatic public displays. We often expect God to arrive with the thunder of a roaring crowd, with flashing lights, or with sudden dramatic interventions that startle our senses. And when those dramatic signs do not appear, we quickly conclude that God is absent. We assume that, because nothing noisy is happening, heaven must be inactive. What a tragic misconception. The deepest and most transformative works of the Spirit rarely happen in the hurricane. They happen in the unseen realm, in the quiet calibrations of the inner person. God does not need to shout to establish his authority. A king does not need to scream in his own court to be obeyed. A simple whisper, a gentle motion of his hand, is more than enough to move armies. To receive the life-changing message that is approaching your life, you must learn to shift your attention away from the sensational and begin to tune your spirit to the sacred whisper of God. Consider the prophet Elijah when he fled to Mount Horeb. He was exhausted, emotionally drained, and deeply disillusioned. He had seen fire fall from heaven on Mount Carmel. He had witnessed the miraculous defeat of false prophets, yet in the aftermath, he found himself hiding in a dark cave, asking for his life to end. He stood on the mountain waiting for God to pass by, and the scripture records that a great and strong wind tore the mountains and broke the rocks in pieces before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind came an earthquake that shook the foundations of the earth. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake came a consuming fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. Elijah had to watch every dramatic demonstration pass away, empty, until finally there came a sound of sheer silence, a still, small voice. And when Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his mantle and went out to the entrance of the cave. It was in the quiet whisper that the destiny of nations was handed to him. This sublime paradox of divine communication was captured with profound insight by C.S. Lewis in his masterpiece, Till We Have Faces. Reflecting on the mystery of God's silence during our seasons of questioning, he penned these unforgettable words: "I know now, Lord, why you utter no answer. You are yourself the answer. Before your face questions die away, what other answer would suffice?" Let those words sink into the restless places of your mind tonight. You have been demanding explanations from God. You have asked why this door closed, why that person walked away, and why you had to endure such a long, agonizing delay. And God's response has not been a lengthy argument or a point-by-point explanation. His response has been His own presence. He did not answer with an intellectual debate. He answered by drawing near to you. When God gives you Himself, every frantic question loses its power to torment you. You begin to realize that the silent season was not an absence of answers, but the arrival of the answer Himself. How then do you calibrate your spirit to hear this gentle voice? It begins by cultivating the discipline of internal quietness. You cannot hear a whisper if your mind is constantly bombarded by social media feeds, endless debates, and the anxious chatter of surrounding culture. Spiritual sensitivity requires intentional moments of unplugging. It requires sitting in the morning or evening without a screen in your hand, allowing your thoughts to settle like muddy water clearing in a still glass. When the sediment of anxiety sinks to the bottom, the clarity of God's Spirit rises to the surface. You will begin to notice quiet impressions, sudden clarity about decisions, and a gentle sense of peace directing you away from certain paths and toward others. These are not random coincidences. They are the preliminary transmissions of heaven. God is training your spiritual reflexes so that when the major message arrives, you will recognize its signature instantly. You will not confuse the voice of the shepherd with the noise of the world. Let us return to the sacred text in 1 Kings, chapter 19, verses 11 through 13, and hear its timeless wisdom. And he said, "Go forth and stand upon the mount before the Lord. And, behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind rent the mountains, and brake in pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind, and after the wind an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake, and after the earthquake a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire, and after the fire a still small voice. And it was so, when Elijah heard it, that he wrapped his face in his mantle, and went out, and stood in the entering in of the cave." Notice that Elijah did not cover his face during the hurricane, the earthquake, or the fire. He covered his face only when the whisper came. Why? Because he recognized that holy reverence belongs not to raw physical power, but to the intimate presence of the living God. When God speaks quietly, it forces us to draw near. You do not have to lean in to hear thunder, but you must draw close to hear a whisper. God's quietness is an invitation to holy intimacy. Rest in this assurance tonight. You no longer need to exhaust your soul, searching for grand, dramatic signs to validate your standing with God. The still small voice is already working within your heart. It is that deep conviction that refuses to let you give up, even when circumstances seem completely hopeless. It is that steady peace that guards your mind in the middle of sleepless nights. It is that quiet, knowing that your story is not over, despite what medical reports, bank statements, or critical voices have said. You are being tuned, refined, and sensitized. The frequency of heaven is overtaking the noise of your fears. As we cross into the next phase of our journey, prepare your spirit to understand why this preparation required such deep testing. God is forging a messenger who can carry the truth without wavering, and the crucible you have walked through was designed to make you unshakable. There is a spiritual law that heaven never violates. God will never entrust a heavyweight message to an untested vessel. A mandate that has the power to transform lives, break generational curses, and open doors of eternal significance cannot be placed into hands that are easily seduced by pride or broken by the first wave of opposition. If God had given you this life-changing message 2 years ago, or 5 years ago, you might have used it to build your own monument. You might have used the favor of God to seek human applause, or you might have collapsed under the weight of spiritual warfare that accompanies genuine elevation. Therefore, the crushing you experienced was not destruction, it was testing. Like fine gold placed into the silversmith's crucible, every trial was calibrated to burn away the impurities of self-reliance, vanity, and bitterness. The silversmith knows the metal is pure when he can look into the molten surface and see his own reflection mirrored back with perfect clarity. God has kept you in the crucible until his character could be seen in your responses. Remember the young boy Samuel serving under Eli in Shiloh. The word of the Lord was rare in those days. There was no widespread revelation. One night, as Samuel lay down in the tabernacle near the ark of God, a voice called out his name in the darkness, "Samuel, Samuel." Samuel ran to Eli 3 consecutive times, assuming it was the old priest calling him, because he did not yet know the voice of the Lord. Eli, having lost his spiritual sharpness, took time to realize what was happening. Finally, Eli understood and instructed the boy, "Go, lie down, and it shall be, if he call thee, that thou shalt say, 'Speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth.'" Samuel had to learn the posture of listening before he could receive the burden of prophecy. He had to learn that hearing God is not about running frantically from room to room. It is about lying down in quiet submission, declaring yourself a servant. When Samuel assumed that humble posture, the Lord came and stood, and revealed a message that made the ears of everyone who heard it tingle. This crucible of preparation was beautifully illuminated by C.S. Lewis in his profound treatise, The Problem of Pain. He wrote words that every suffering chosen soul should engrave upon their memory. God, who foresaw your tribulation, has specially armed you to go through it, not without pain, but without stain. Meditate on that profound distinction. Not without pain, but without stain. God never promised that the preparation of your life would be painless. The pruning shears of the vine dresser hurt when they cut away branches you loved. The hammer of the sculptor aches when it chips away stubborn flaws. Pain is part of the mortal experience. But God has promised that the fire will not leave a permanent stain upon your character. It will not leave you bitter, cynical, or hardened in heart. Instead, you will emerge from the furnace like the 3 Hebrew children in Babylon, without the smell of smoke upon your garments, standing taller and freer than when you were cast into the flames. One of the most critical requirements for carrying God's incoming message is the complete purification of your heart from the poison of resentment. When God elevates you, you will encounter people who previously doubted you, mocked your vision, or betrayed your trust in your most vulnerable hour. If there is lingering bitterness inside your soul, you will be tempted to use your breakthrough as a weapon of retaliation. You will want to prove them wrong, make them regret their actions, or display your triumph in their faces. Heaven cannot permit that. Vengeance belongs to the Lord, not to his messengers. God had to keep you in the waiting room until your desire for revenge died and was replaced by genuine Christ-like compassion. When Joseph was exalted to the throne of Egypt after years of betrayal and imprisonment, he did not use his supreme power to execute his brothers. He wept over them, fed them, and declared, "You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good." That is the posture of a mature messenger. Let us read again the sacred posture described in 1 Samuel, chapter 3, verses 9 and 10. Therefore Eli said unto Samuel, "Go, lie down, and it shall be, if he call thee, that thou shalt say, 'Speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth.'" So Samuel went and lay down in his place. And the Lord came and stood and called as at other times, "Samuel, Samuel." Then Samuel answered, "Speak, for thy servant heareth." Take that phrase into your prayers tonight. Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. Notice the order. First, you acknowledge him as Lord, then you position yourself as a servant, and only then do you ask him to speak. Many people come to God as demanding consumers, saying, "Lord, give me what I want, validate my plans, and bless my timeline." But the chosen one approaches with empty hands and a bowed heart, saying, "My life is yours. My plans are laid at your feet. Tell me what to say, where to walk, and how to serve your purpose in my generation." You stand tonight as a vessel that has passed through the fire. The cracks in your past have not disqualified you. They have become the very channels through which God's light will shine upon others. The tears you cried in solitude have softened your heart, giving you an empathy that no theological textbook could ever teach. You can comfort the broken because your own heart has been broken and healed. You can guide those trapped in the dark because you know the way out of the pit. The crucible was severe, but its work is complete. Your motives have been purified, your pride has been laid down, and your ears are tuned to the frequency of heaven. Now, as we enter the fourth movement of this message, we must examine the sacred mystery of God's timing. Why did it take so long? Why did God wait until this exact moment to release the blueprint? The answer will bring immense relief to your weary soul. One of the greatest tests of the human soul is the agony of waiting. When God gives you a glimpse of your calling early in life, the human mind naturally expects the fulfillment to happen immediately. We create mental schedules, we set artificial deadlines, and when year after year passes without visible progress, a deep spiritual exhaustion sets in. Proverbs warns us that hope deferred makes the heart sick. You watch others receive their breakthroughs. You see doors opening for people who do not seem to carry half your consecration, and the enemy whispers his favorite lie into your ear. God has bypassed you. His promises were for others, not for you. In that agonizing waiting room, the greatest temptation is to rush ahead of God, to try to force a breakthrough through human striving, or to settle for a counterfeit open door just to escape the pressure of the quiet. Do not yield to that panic. Divine timing is never early, and it is never late. It operates upon a celestial calendar that human eyes cannot see. The prophet Habakkuk understood this struggle intimately. Living in a time of national confusion, injustice, and unanswered prayers, he made a deliberate decision to stop running in anxiety. In Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 1, he declared, "I will stand upon my watch, and set me upon the tower, and will watch, to see what he will say unto me, and what I shall answer when I am reproved." Habakkuk climbed up to the watchtower. He removed himself from the street-level panic of the crowd, and positioned himself as a sentinel whose only duty was to watch and wait. He did not demand immediate answers. He adopted the posture of patient expectation. When you ascend to the spiritual watchtower of prayer and trust, you rise above the noise of earthly circumstances. You stop measuring God's faithfulness by today's emotional weather, and you begin to look toward the horizon where the fulfillment is approaching. The watchtower is where human striving ends and divine revelation begins. C.S. Lewis offered a masterclass on reframing life's delays. In his private correspondence, published in Letters to Arthur Greeves, wrote these penetrating lines: "The great thing, if one can, is to stop regarding all the unpleasant things as interruptions of one's own or real life. The truth is, of course, that what one calls the interruptions are precisely one's real life, the life which God is sending one, day by day." Think about how radically that changes your perspective. You thought this delay was an interruption of your destiny. You thought the illness, the job loss, the betrayal, or the waiting season was a wasted detour that derailed your life's plan. Lewis reminds us, there are no interruptions in the providence of God. That delay was not an interruption of your real life. It was the very substance of your training. Every frustrating detour was a hidden classroom where patience was forged, where endurance was built, and where your spiritual roots were driven deep into the rock. God was not wasting your time. He was redeeming your character. The great danger of misunderstanding divine timing is the temptation to birth an Ishmael. When Abraham and Sarah grew weary of waiting for God's promised son, they decided to take matters into their own hands. They devised a human solution, an earthly shortcut, and Ishmael was born. And though God in his mercy showed kindness to Ishmael, that human shortcut produced centuries of conflict, grief, and spiritual friction. Every time you try to force a breakthrough in your own strength, you birth an Ishmael that you will eventually have to manage in your own flesh. A manufactured breakthrough always requires human effort to sustain it. If you manipulate a door to open, you will have to manipulate people to keep it open. But when God opens a door, no demon in hell can shut it. And when God releases his Isaac in your life, it carries no sorrow with it. Wait for the Isaac of God. Do not settle for a rushed human substitute when the authentic promise is on its way. Listen to the sovereign answer that the Lord gave to Habakkuk upon the watchtower. In Habakkuk chapter 2, verses 2 and 3, the eternal decree was recorded. And the Lord answered me and said, Write the vision and make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth it. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come. It will not tarry. Let those words bring peace to your spirit. The vision is for an appointed time. There is a specific date, an exact hour, marked on heaven's calendar for your turnaround. The text says, At the end it shall speak and not lie. The silence of the middle was necessary, but the ending belongs to the voice of God. Even if it seems to linger past your human expectations, the command of God is, wait for it, because when the appointed time strikes, it will not arrive 1 second late. The delay was not denial, it was the precision of divine timing. So tonight, you can release the heavy burden of trying to manage the calendar. You can take your hands off the clock and surrender your timeline to the Father. You do not have to live under the agonizing pressure of feeling that time is running out. The God who commanded the sun to stand still for Joshua, and who turned back the shadow on the sundial of Ahaz for Hezekiah, is the master of time itself. He can redeem in a single season what was lost over 10 long years. He can compress the journey of decades into a single day of divine favor. Your waiting has not been in vain. It has been the incubation period of your destiny. As we cross into the 5th act of this message, be ready to perceive the atmosphere shifting around you. When God prepares to break the silence, He begins to unveil the secret things, and the sudden transition from the prison of waiting to the palace of purpose is at hand. Have you felt a strange heaviness in the atmosphere lately? Not a heaviness of depression or defeat, but a spiritual weight, a sense that something immense is hovering just beyond the visible horizon. Women who have given birth describe the transition phase of labor as the most intense, demanding, and overwhelming part of the entire process. Right before the child arrives, the contractions are the strongest, the exhaustion is the deepest, and the desire to give up is the most acute. That is where you are standing in the spiritual realm right now. You are in the transition phase of your season. The intensity of the pressure you have felt over recent weeks is not a sign of collapse. It is the unmistakable evidence that the delivery of your life-changing message is imminent. The spiritual atmosphere always becomes contested right before the veil is torn. Do not mistake the labor pains for the end of your life. They are the painful proof that new life is about to break forth into the light. Look at the prophet Jeremiah during one of the darkest moments in Israel's history. Jerusalem was surrounded by the Babylonian army. Famine was rampant, and Jeremiah himself was locked away, imprisoned in the court of the guard. He could not move freely. He could not change his physical surroundings, and from a human perspective, his ministry seemed utterly neutralized. Yet the sacred text in Jeremiah chapter 33, verse 1 records, Moreover, the word of the Lord came unto Jeremiah the second time, while he was yet shut up in the court of the prison. Read that again. The word of the Lord came while he was yet shut up in prison. Physical walls cannot hinder the voice of God. Financial limitations cannot block divine revelation. Isolation cannot prevent heaven from delivering its blueprint. Right there, in the confined place of limitation and distress, God visited his prophet with the greatest revelations of future redemption. Your current limitations are not an obstacle to God. They are the very backdrop against which his glory will be made manifest. This deep resonance between our inner longing and divine destiny was articulated with unforgettable precision by C.S. Lewis in Mere Christianity. He wrote, "If I find in myself a desire which no experience in this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that I was made for another world." Think about the deepest desires of your heart tonight. Why have you never been able to find satisfaction in shallow, temporary pleasures? Why did worldly success always leave an empty echo in your soul? Why have you always felt like an outsider, even in rooms filled with cheering people? Because you were not engineered for superficial existence. That ache in your soul, that holy dissatisfaction with the ordinary, it was the signature of your Creator, marking you for a higher calling. God placed an eternal hunger inside you so that you would never settle for an earthly counterfeit. You were made to carry a message that points beyond the horizons of this temporary world, and every season of feeling misunderstood was simply heaven reminding you where your true citizenship and purpose belong. Hear now the legendary invitation that God gave to Jeremiah in that prison cell. In Jeremiah chapter 33, verse 3, the voice of the Lord declared, "Call unto me, and I will answer thee, and shew thee great and mighty things, which thou knowest not." In the original text, that word translated as mighty things refers to unsearchable, hidden, and inaccessible treasures of wisdom, secrets that are fenced off from normal human reasoning, treasures that cannot be bought with money or discovered through intellect alone. God was telling Jeremiah, "You are looking at your stone walls, but I am looking at unsearchable glory. Call to me, and I will open the vaults of heaven." That same invitation is extended to you tonight. When you call upon God from the sincerity of your heart, He does not give you ordinary advice. He unveils the strategic blueprints of your future. He reveals solutions to problems that seemed impossible. He gives creative wisdom that confounds the proud, and He imparts a clarity that instantly dispels years of fog. When this divine message begins to land in your spirit, you will notice a sudden alignment taking place in the physical world around you. God does not speak a message without also preparing the infrastructure to support it. Suddenly, connections that were dormant will come alive. The right people, divinely appointed destiny helpers, who possess the integrity, resources, and wisdom you need, will begin to intersect your life. Opportunities that were previously locked will turn on their hinges with effortless ease. You will not have to manipulate, bargain, or compromise your convictions to walk through those doors. The same God who orchestrated the timing of the message will orchestrate the providential resources to fulfill it. You will look back at the years of drought and marvel at how quickly the dry ground can produce a harvest. The preparation was long, but the manifestation is sudden. God is aligning your steps with precision, moving you from the sidelines into the very center of His will. Stand up in your spirit tonight and shake off the dust of the prison house. You are no longer a prisoner of past disappointments. You are no longer defined by the delays, the rejections, or the closed doors of your history. The season of being hidden under the shadow of the Almighty has served its sacred purpose. You have been tested in the furnace, tuned in the silence, and armed with divine endurance. The blueprint is in your hands. The frequency of heaven is clear in your ears, and the mandate of God is resting upon your shoulders. As we step into our final act, we will speak the prophetic benediction over your life. We will declare the new thing that God is springing forth in your desert, and you will step across the threshold into the life-changing chapter that was prepared for you before the foundation of the world. To step fully into the new chapter that God has written for you, there is one final, decisive action you must take. You must completely release the grave clothes of the previous season. When Jesus stood outside the tomb of Lazarus and commanded him to come forth, Lazarus walked out of the cave alive, but he was still wrapped from head to foot in burial cloths. Jesus looked at those standing near and issued a crucial command: loose him and let him go. It is entirely possible to be spiritually resurrected into a new season, yet still carry the restrictive wrappings of your past trauma, fear, and insecurity. Tonight, God is calling you to strip off those old grave clothes. Stop speaking the language of the wilderness. Stop expecting betrayal. Stop anticipating failure, and stop looking over your shoulder in fear of what used to hurt you. The tomb is empty, the door is open, and the breath of God is filling your lungs. Leave the shadows of yesterday behind, because the sunrise of your calling is breaking upon the horizon. Listen to the glorious promise spoken through the prophet Isaiah in chapter 43, verses 18 and 19. Remember ye not the former things, neither consider the things of old. Behold, I will do a new thing. Now it shall spring forth. Shall ye not know it? I will even make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. Notice the divine paradox in that verse. God makes a way where there was no path, and he causes rivers to flow where there was only dry sand. You do not need to figure out how God will fulfill his word in your life. You do not need to possess all the resources, connections, or worldly credentials. The God of the new thing creates the road as you take the step of obedience. He turns barren places into thriving gardens of purpose. The seasons of struggle were not wasted. They were the dry soil that makes this miracle so undeniably supernatural. When the river breaks forth in your life, everyone who witnessed your drought will know that only the hand of the living God could have done this. Let these words of C.S. Lewis from his collected letters resound within your heart as an unshakable banner of hope. There are far, far better things ahead than any we leave behind. Speak that truth over your future tonight. There are far better friendships ahead than the ones that faded away. There are far greater open doors ahead than the ones that slammed shut in your face. There is a deeper, more profound joy awaiting you than any happiness you tasted in your past. The enemy wants you to believe that your best days are in the rearview mirror, that your youth, your opportunities, or your prime have slipped away. It is a lie from the pit of darkness. In the economy of the kingdom of God, the best wine is always reserved for the end. The glory of the latter house shall exceed the glory of the former. God has preserved you through the fire precisely because the greatest chapter of your assignment is about to be written. Receive now the mantle of divine clarity that is settling upon your life. The fog that clouded your judgment over past months is lifting. The confusion, the double-mindedness, and the agonizing uncertainty are fleeing. Before the light of God's revealed message, you will know who you are. You will know why you were born. You will understand why God allowed you to walk through specific sorrows, because you will see how every single scar has equipped you to speak with authority to those who are hurting. You are not an accident. You are not a second-class believer, and you are not wandering aimlessly through this world. You are an elected ambassador of the kingdom of light, entrusted with a message of hope, restoration, and unshakable truth for a generation in crisis. Walk with your head held high, not in arrogance, but in the holy dignity of a servant who knows his master's voice. I speak this prophetic benediction over you tonight in the mighty name of Jesus. May the peace of God, which surpasses all human understanding, guard your heart and your mind as you step across this threshold. May every chain of generational stagnation, fear, and delay be shattered from your lineage forever. May the Lord grant you ears to hear his whispers, eyes to perceive his divine alignments, and the supernatural courage to obey his instructions without compromise. Where there was shame, may double honor be poured out upon your head. Where there was weeping in the night, may uncontainable joy greet you in the morning. May the life-changing message that God has placed inside your spirit ignite a fire of hope wherever your voice is heard. You are sealed under the blood of the everlasting covenant, protected on the right hand and on the left, and no weapon formed against you shall ever prosper. Go forward now in absolute peace. The silence was not empty, it was full of God. The preparation was not a delay, it was the construction of your spiritual palace. You have heard the still small voice. You have passed through the crucible, and the appointed time has arrived. Step forward into tomorrow with your eyes fixed upon the author and finisher of your faith. Speak what he commands you to speak. Love those he sends across your path, and rest in the certainty that he who began this good work in you will perform it until the day of completion. You are his chosen one. You are his consecrated messenger, and your life-changing season begins tonight. Amen.